Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to give you my thoughts on Extraction, which I played a good deal of at PAX. It was a fairly surprise announcement. They actually said to press, yeah, we're unveiling something, and it's going to be with Nexon. We didn't know what it was. Nexon is now publishing Extraction. What the hell's Extraction? I've never heard of Extraction. What's going on? Well, you might have heard of Dirty Bomb, which was the upcoming title from Splash Damage. Dirty Bomb is now Extraction. Same game. What is it? It's a free-to-play class-based shooter. Splash Damage are the guys that made Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, which I widely regard as one of the best multiplayer FPS of all time, and then they also made Quake Wars, which is pretty good, and they then made Brink, which I feel like I was the only person in the world that actually liked, but I had the good fortune of having it work properly right out of the gate, as opposed to Xbox 360 gamers that suffered greatly, and I think it was AMD users actually had real problems with that title, so that was not exactly what I would call ideal, to say the least. So now they come along with this, which is reminiscent of Brink in certain ways, but not others. So I'm going to walk you through the game. I'm going to give you my opinions on its current state. This is very much before closed beta, by the way, so you should consider this a beta product. It's not even available in closed beta as of yet in the US, so at this point, there's a lot more work to go on this title, so just bear that in mind. So how does it work? Well, it's a class-based FPS, and it's very much objective-focused, which is Splash Damage in a nutshell. Every time they've ever done a multiplayer FPS of any description, it's been very objective-focused, and that was the biggest strength, I think, of Wolfenstein Enemy Territory. It's pretty damn cool. Brink also had a similar system, and this game kind of builds on what Brink had. What we're playing right now is the stopwatch game type. That was available in Brink as well, and it's a shorter version of their general objective campaign, whereby you are tasked with playing one of two sides who are either trying to complete the objective or trying to sabotage it and prevent it from happening. And those modes always had multiple stages. If you went as far as looking at Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, that game actually had stages go across different levels, which was pretty damn fantastic in a sort of short-form campaign mode. Brink kind of had a campaign as well in the way that it worked, but it was a little bit less obvious, considering you could play the missions out of order. In this case, though, Stopwatch shortens the campaign, it shortens the big objective play, and it gives you a couple of objectives which you've got to beat, and then the other guys have got to do the same thing. Yeah, you switch sides, and they've got to beat it quicker than you managed to. So that's the way that it works. That's pretty much Stopwatch in a nutshell. It made sense because it was on the PAX floor, so obviously you want a game mode that can be done in about 15 minutes, and the big objective-based ones wouldn't work. So I mentioned it was class-based. Currently there are 5 classes. They were talking about having more than 20, and they were also talking about adding more classes League of Legends style to the game as part of their free-to-play model. They're not talking about having loadout systems, which is a little bit interesting considering Brink was very, very heavy on the class customization, both in terms of the weapons, the add-ons that you used, as well as the idea that you would be able to customize your character in terms of its looks. Now, I cannot imagine that they will not have some degree of looks customization, but it seems like each of the individual characters has a silhouette to some degree. Not a hugely obvious one. I mean, we're not talking like TF2 levels of instant recognition there, but each of the classes looks a little bit different, and I imagine they don't want to let you completely customize that because it would take away from the immediate sense of identification. Being able to look at a class and immediately say, oh yeah, this is what he can do, and I should be aware of that, is fairly important. Now, each of these classes has a primary and secondary weapon, as well as 2 abilities, and also everyone carries C4 to demo objectives. What they didn't want is for you to have to rely on a particular class to do an objective. However, certain classes have different advantages when it comes to certain objectives. Say there's a class that's a little bit faster at hacking than everybody else, but everyone can hack regardless, so there's definitely a role there. The classes that we got to play in this version were this guy right here, who has an assault rifle and is able to drop ammunition for people as well as call in an airstrike. There's a female scout who has a shotgun and a small SMG and is able to drop trip mines. There's a medic class, there is an assault class who, as you might imagine, just kind of has assault-style weaponry, and then you also have more of a heavy kind of guy, the point man, who happens to have a very, very large light machine gun. Pretty damn good at shooting it as well. So those are the classes that are currently available. To say whether or not it needs more, well, I guess we'd have to just reserve judgment until it happens to have more. It seemed like a pretty decent selection from the start, but obviously people are going to get highly bored, I think, of a 5-class system without any sense of progression. But does it have no progression, really? Well, the answer to that is no. It does have some progression, but it's done a little bit differently. So you remember the way that they did it in Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, where they actually had this experience system, this kind of level up system, but it didn't persist from game to game, it just persisted in the campaign that you were playing? Well, it looks like Extraction is going to have that as well. So you're going to be able to level up, and from what the guys over at Splash Damage told me, you'll be able to unlock these various ultimate abilities as you go through. They were looking at having some kind of two-tiered progression, but they weren't 100% sure as to how that would work yet. What I have to say, though, is the idea of having, one, balanced classes from the outset, assuming that they do, in fact, have balanced classes, and secondly, having an experience progression system that only keeps going while you're playing that particular campaign and disappears afterwards is actually quite compelling. I think that's a pretty good idea. Unfortunately, the downside of that system is that you can very much fall into a rich get richer, poor get poorer kind of scenario where things kind of snowball in the favor of the team that's winning. So it's a little bit difficult to balance, honestly. I'm intrigued to see how they're going to do that. They did say that it will not be based on kill-death ratio. It will be based almost entirely on objective play, which I think is a pretty promising idea. And honestly, it fits in quite nicely with the kind of game that this is. KD doesn't really matter. Just doing the objective matters. You're not going to be rewarded for killing a bunch of dudes, even though I'm doing so fairly effectively here. You're going to be rewarded for stopping the opponent from taking the objective, or of course, taking the objective yourself if you happen to be on the other side. And I'm going to be honest, I like games like that. I have liked every Splash Damage game that comes out, so you're going to have to expect me to maybe lean in the direction of saying Splash Damage games are good. After all, I liked Brink a lot. I thought Brink was a really, really good game. It had some flaws. Enemies were very bullet spongy. As of yet, they don't seem to have resolved that in Extraction. Things are still a little bit bullet spongy. The game is very much based on headshots, which one can argue is good, you know, especially on a PC-based shooter. Not so good on consoles for obvious reasons, but on PC, getting those headshots is a pretty important thing indeed. And, you know, if you want to talk about other games that focus on headshots, you could talk about something like Counter-Strike, and no one really argued that that's a skillless game. But it does make some of the enemies feel a little bit bullet spongy. And also at the moment, the weapons don't really have a lot of kick, which is a problem that I also noticed in Brink as well. The weapons just didn't feel that great. They were not all that satisfying to fire. There were some exceptions. Obviously, Brink had a lot of guns. But as it stands, outside of stuff like the shotgun and the sniper rifle in this game, they don't really feel that great yet. You know? The assault rifle's okay, but you're not seeing a lot of kick with it. It feels a bit more like a bullet hose than I would have hoped. So we'll see where they take that. I'm hoping that they do improve the kick of the guns significantly, though, because they felt decent, but not as great as I would have hoped for. What I do like is the map design. The way that the maps are designed is that you're pretty much always going to be facing the enemy. So you're not going to have anybody spawning behind you or anything like that, which is always nice because lately some games have had those kind of problems. And the objective-based play really helps to focus the fighting around key areas. But that also means that there is the opportunity to sneak around and attack from behind, because people are not expecting that. So I think there's a level of strategy involved in that. And if you want to play a sneakier kind of character and make those big plays from the rear of the enemy force, you can do that and take out several enemies in the process, which I do like. One other thing I do like as well is that they have made the classes fairly interdependent in the sense that being able to be revived and healed is a big deal in this game. The actual health does not regenerate particularly fast, as you'll probably notice. The game also has a health bar. Thank God for that. For some reason, a lot of modern games don't really have that, so it's nice to be able to see your health. That's always good. And also, you run out of ammo quite quickly, which I did like. Obviously, as the class that I was playing there, not really a big deal. I've got my ammo packs, I can toss them down, but a lot of the time, yeah, you'll run out of ammo. So the team is trying its best to support each other in that respect. And not running around with 500 bullets, I think, is a positive. It kind of forces your team into a situation where they must work together and you have to help each other. And then those support roles become all that more valuable. And since you get rewarded with points for that, then you will get a pretty satisfying experience if that's the kind of player that you like to be. Let's skip ahead and show a couple of the other classes. As you can see, I'm kind of rocking it with this guy, but I'd like to show you a couple of the others. Now, please, please, splash damage. Can you get rid of that bloody screen so real nonsense? You have a health bar. We don't really need to see that, so get rid of it. Okay, so let's run through the classes, shall we? Thunder's the Assault. He's got an LMG. He also happens to have C4 like everybody else there as well. He's got a flashbang grenade. And it's got both pliers and a hacking device. Useful combinations. Then you've got the medic, which is exactly what you would expect. Defibrillator and the med pack. That is Proxy the Engineer. She happens to have a shotgun as well as a small submachine gun. And then you've got the class that you saw me playing earlier, Arty, fire support in the form of airstrike and an ammo pack there. Heartbeat sensor, sniper rifle, as well as a screwdriver and C4. You'll see they've all got these kind of utility tools that are better for certain objectives versus others, which is pretty cool. But you don't necessarily need them. They just speed the process up. They don't require you to play specific classes for specific objectives because they felt like that was too restrictive to the player. So I'm going to play a little bit of Proxy here. You'll notice the speed difference immediately, of course. She's pretty damn fast. Unfortunately, she doesn't have the smart run system, which was disappointing, actually. I really hope that they would put that in there. Now, they have stated that they do want in the future to maybe implement a couple of classes that happen to have smart run, but they don't want to put smart run in for everybody. And that does, I gotta say, feel like a little bit of a step backwards. I mean, Extraction in its current state is solid, if not spectacular, and, you know, it's just kind of run-of-the-mill right now. I like the fact that it's objective-focused, but it feels like a bit of a step back from Brink. Brink had the objectives just like this did. It had maybe a slicker presentation style, I would say. This is not a great map to demonstrate it, because obviously it's very brown, and Brink actually had a lot of color choice in the palette, which was quite nice there, and it also had some slightly stylized characters in a way that Extraction doesn't have. So, honestly, looking at Brink and then comparing it to Extraction, at least in its current state, you think, oh, well, Brink seems like a better game in general. Brink had some innovations. This game, of course, does do the objective-based play, but stopwatch play was in Brink, objectives were in Brink, and they were also in Enemy Territory Quake Wars, as well as Wolfenstein Enemy Territory. That just seems like the trademark of splash damage when it comes to multiplayer FPS. And I'm not against that. Don't get me wrong, I love the fact that splash damage does that, because not all that many other companies do objective-based play all that well, and the ones that do just don't do it as well as splash damage. And splash damage, I feel, does a way better job with it. But what I'm looking for, I suppose, with this game is to take the lessons learned from Brink, and Brink's failure, and see where you can go from there. Could the free-to-play model actually be a boon in this respect? Could it help? It could, because what that means is there's a steady stream of content coming in. Now, they were quick to say, yeah, we don't want to make it pay to win, but you know, everybody says that. I have not heard all that many companies come out and say, yeah, we'd love to have pay to win. That sounds like a fantastic plan. No, most people don't say that. It sounds like what they're going to do is cosmetics, and they're also going to allow you to unlock certain classes and variants for cost or otherwise earn them in-game over time. That seems like the way that they're going to do it. That can work. I still believe the League of Legends model is fine, by the way. I know some people don't. It's funny, because a couple of years ago, people were hailing the LoL model as being the way forward, and now that people have, I suppose, got used to that or have higher expectations, they've got to the point of saying, nope, the LoL model's bad, because it's kind of pay to win, and having more choices makes you more powerful and more adaptive, and it also means you can, like, play the flavor of the week class if that happens to be a balance issue and so on and so forth. And they're not wrong, but it's still a fairly reasonable free-to-play model as far as I'm concerned. It's pretty fair, for the most part. I think that this game could work with that, honestly, but they have to be very careful with the class balance. The plus side of it is that it would get constant map updates, which is kind of a big deal, because that means if you're looking for a constant stream of new objectives and cool stuff to play, then I think that you're going to find it if they're able to keep the updates up with Extraction. Secondly, of course, you're going to get more classes and just a constant stream of new content. That could be good. That could keep people interested, where it didn't manage to do so with Brink. Obviously, playing the same maps over and over again with Brink can get a little bit boring, so maybe they'll be able to pull it off in this respect. Outside of that, what I'm seeing is a pretty solid objective-based FPS that I had a decent amount of fun with, and there's plenty of work still to be done on it. Biggest complaints come in the form of the fact that it's a bit bullet spongy once again. I like the focus on headshots, but maybe they need to up the damage slightly to the body, just slightly. Not too much, but you know, make it reward headshots, but not be absurd when you don't get them. Then I would also say that the feel of the weapons right now is not that great. Same problem that Brink had, really. The weapons just don't have the kick, they don't have the meat. The sound assets in terms of the weapons are not really where I want them to be yet. They sound fairly par for the course, and I would hope for more in that respect. And of course, I haven't got a chance to see the big objective-based mode. If it's a good 4 or 5 or 6 string objective that transcends the usual style of play and also goes from map to map, I think I will be loving it. I really will, because that was what I'd love to do in Wolfenstein Enemy Territory. There's a long way to go, though. What I've seen looks promising. What I played was fun. No doubt about that. It didn't blow me away. But it did give me that objective-based thrill that I was able to get from games like Brink and games like Wolfenstein Enemy Territory. And for me, maybe that's enough. For others, though, it might not. They're entering a very competitive space. The free-to-play FPS is certainly strong, and it also has to compete against the solid progression-based stuff like, say, Battlefield and also like Call of Duty. However, maybe, just maybe, there is some strength in the idea of having progression that is in-game and persists through a campaign, but then disappears. I think that could be appealing to a lot of people. It's definitely appealing to me. If your class loadouts are kind of the same from the start, and you don't gain huge amounts of advantages, and everyone kind of starts on an equal playing field, then I think perhaps that might appeal to a lot of people who are maybe just burning out on the whole standard FPS progression model. We'll see. I'm looking forward to checking this out once it actually hits closed beta, and I do wish them the best of luck, because I love Splash Damage to death. I also hope that their work with Arkham Origins is going to work out well. They're creating an asymmetric multiplayer mode, which sounds incredibly exciting, so I'm hoping that that works out well for them. And of course, you can check out the rest of my PAX footage by checking the end slate at the end of this video for a little selection, or you can look at the PAX playlists and my recent videos on my channel. Thank you very much for watching, folks. A look at Extraction, aka Dirty Bomb, which will be entering closed beta in the next couple of months, apparently. So we'll see how that turns out. I'll see you next time.